This year's honoree is Dr. Bruce German. He's been in town since yesterday morning. He's been to the top of Kansas City, up at the World War I Memorial. Those in control of the project budget, we did get discount prices to come in, so we're good there. For those of you new to the Spenser Award, so the Spenser Award was set up by actually a donation by Kent Spenser, who was an agricultural chemist, manufacturing supplier, made some money and gave back to the community by establishing this award. And it's really set up for support of chemistry in agriculture and food chemistry. And if you think about it today, there's a population somewhere around 7 billion people, give or take, from earthquakes and hurricanes this week. But the population is expected to go over 9 million within the next 25 to 30 years. So we need to feed the world's population with the same amount of land. And some challenges are getting more. So it's up to the contributions of scientists from all disciplines, including chemistry, to help figure out how to continue feeding the world's population and probably in a more sustainable way. And if you're following the news at all, there's a lot of news about antibiotic resistance. We're very concerned about that impacting human health, but there's a lot of pressure on animal health, particularly production animals, because there is a lot of antibiotic use in production animals. Now, whether or not there's a strong tie to use of antibiotics in production animals and human health problems, it's still a point of attack, because we're certainly not going to get human health doctors to stop overprescribing antibiotics. And the animal industry, where we've implemented means, has shown that they do have the ability to reduce antibiotic use. So we've kind of built a scientific program to focus on food and nutrition, tying it in a bit to Dr. German's work. But we kind of set up some talks to follow kind of milk from the farm through the processing plant, and then thinking about how it impacts nutrition in human beings. And with some talks focused on really some technologies that potentially reduce the use of antibiotics, like vaccines, or maybe some novel proteins we find that can replace today's antibiotics. So I think this is a pretty exciting program. We've got people donated their time, and I appreciate those people that did the work to come here. I want to thank you for that. It's been a pleasure to get to know you and your work. So go through the program. I won't come up and reintroduce each speaker as they come on board. You've got the programs in front of you. So this will last till about 4:45. When that's done, there'll be a short break, and then we're having a bit of a career forum. So all of the speakers have agreed to participate in a careers forum. And if you look at this kind of interest, we've got a couple people from industry, which is one career path. We've got a couple of people from academic life, another career path. We've got one from a government research institute, which is another interesting option. And another person that started up his own business, so very entrepreneurial. So it gives you a range of things to think about. What do I want to do when I get out of school, and what am I do to change my current career path? So it's going to be a bit of a couple presentations, a bit of dialogue, and then a chance for anybody here to talk to the speakers during the social or afterwards. So lastly, we can't do these things without some help. Certainly thank the people at Western Missouri for their providing a facility to us. We've, during these 2 days, had some tours of some local companies, Berger, and Deal, and we appreciate the time they donated to that. Later today, Shadow Milk is providing some milk refreshment for us, and Shimatsu is providing some support for this event. So appreciate all of their help with that. So with that, we'll turn it over to our first speaker.
Right. All right. You can hear me?
Yes.
good deal. All right, so my name is Linda Tikofsky. I'm actually a professional services veterinarian with Boehringer Ingelheim. So I live in upstate New York, so I'm actually one of their field veterinarians. But I'm kind of here at my second home for now. I'm happy to be here today, and I thank you all for inviting me, and it's been a nice opportunity to get to know a bunch of different people in a related industry. My dad would be proud because he was a chemical engineer, and so we had this big discussion when I was a junior in high school, and he wanted me to be a chemical engineer too. I wanted to be a chef. Somehow we managed to agree on veterinary medicine, and I always said when I graduated I was going to have my vet clinic / restaurant, and I was going to call it Linda's Veterinary Vittles, cure 'em or cook 'em. So you know, it's been a long time since I had a chemistry course, so it's forced me to maybe dust off some of that biochemistry a long time ago. But I'm going to, as Tom said, I'm starting with the initial product. So as we're talking about food, was a dairy veterinarian, and then I was a researcher at Cornell in their quality milk production services, and then I joined Boehringer Ingelheim. So I can talk more about that when we get to the career session. But I'm actually, and Tom asked me to kind of cover vaccines for mastitis, because as he said, our goal as veterinarians, our goal at Boehringer Ingelheim is to reduce the amount of antibiotics we use. Save them for when we absolutely need them, but what other kind of technologies can we bring onto the farm to maybe reduce the risk for mastitis? You know, De Laval helps us with a lot of their products doing that. You know, we can do it with vaccines. There are other preventative strategies, and save those antibiotics for when they're absolutely necessary. So I'm going to talk about core antigen vaccines for mastitis in dairy cows. Just a quick show, how many people have actually ever been on a dairy farm? Oh, hey, this is a good audience, so okay. I appreciate that. So we're going to talk, this is not my normal clicker, so we'll talk a little bit about coliform mastitis. There are a lot of things that cause mastitis in dairy cows. We're going to talk about the vaccines that have been developed for that, and this is pretty basic science. There's not a lot of rocket science about these particular vaccines. And then I'll just go through just a couple of studies out of all the ones that are out there that show that they are effective for these animals. So just as kind of a broad overview, we talk about mastitis, and if you think about peritonitis, appendicitis, anything with an itis on the end of it is inflammation. So mastitis is just an inflammation of the mammary gland. That cow has had, usually they get infected through the teat end. 90% of mastitis is caused or initiated by a bacterial infection. The good thing about it is we probably only see maybe 25% of them. The healthy cow will meet that bacteria, have an inflammatory reaction, and get rid of it. But most of it is bacterial. We may have some chemical causes if somebody puts something up a quarter. We may have algae, don't really have a lot of viruses that cause it, but there can be other things that cause it. But when we see a case of mastitis on that dairy farm, it's probably due to bacteria. 25% of cows will have a case of clinical mastitis, and this is information from the National Animal Health Monitoring Service. Okay? Average cost of a case of clinical mastitis is about $444. When I graduated, it was $250, so we've either gotten more expensive or have gotten better math. Most of that comes, and I'll show a little breakdown, in decreased milk production and loss of quality. And so other causes are cost of the veterinary services, increased labor to take care of that animal. Certainly any products you treat with that animal will be that. We also have a lot of concern about mastitis these days on animal welfare concerns. Mastitis is painful. If anybody's ever been a mother and had mastitis, they'll know it's a problem. So, you know, we really want to do as much as to prevent and take care of mastitis as an animal welfare concern as well. And we also know that anytime we have a bacterial infection, we treat it with antibiotics, we run the risk of having residues in a product. And luckily, most of our milk is tested extensively before it ever hits the dairy shelf. But, you know, every time we give an animal an antibiotic, there's an opportunity for a residue. There's a risk for it. So things we can do to reduce mastitis will help address all these concerns. It'll make our producers more profitable, animals will be feeling better and treated better, and will protect our food supply and human health. So, and this kind of just goes through the economic losses. You know, the vet costs, the cost of the drugs is, you know, just a small portion of it. When a cow gets mastitis, she will never produce as much milk in that quarter for the rest of that lactation as she potentially could have. So we really like to, prevent any infections at all. And so what are our common mastitis bacteria? We pretty much break them down to gram-positive and gram-negative. So hopefully everybody's had a basic microbiology course. So the gram-positives are the ones that stain purple under the microscope, and we further break them down in the cattle world into contagious pathogens and environmental pathogens. The contagious pathogens are strep, ag, and staph aureus, and what that means is those bacteria use that udder as a reservoir, and so these bacteria are spread cow to cow at milking time on fomites like milkers' hands, on towels, on milking units, and they will cause a mastitis that is usually subclinical without signs. Our environmental pathogens on the gram-positive side are staphs and streps. And I'll put a plug in for anybody who's dairy related here is, there's another group out there called National Mastitis Council, and they have done a lot of work on mastitis, and it has industry people, producers, veterinarians, researchers all working on reducing mastitis. And one thing that they came out with probably, gosh, how long ago, 70s? The 5-point plan has greatly reduced, they've identified risk management factors to reduce contagious mastitis. So we really don't see a lot of strep, ag, and staph aureus anymore. Our new pathogens that we're seeing more of are actually coming from our environment. And I'm not going to talk about the streps and staphs today, but we're going to focus on these gram-negative bacteria, and particularly the coliforms. E. coli, Klebsiella are going to be the main ones we talk about, and really focus on E. coli. And so these are environmental. That means that cow is exposed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year to bacteria in her environment. And if one or two lucky ones get up at that teat canal, we can have a mastitis resulting. And so we look at, and one of the things I focused on, particularly in research, was where can we best have an effect with antibiotics for mastitis and where should we not treat them? And we've done a lot of work in the past 10 years at looking